Running thanks to take my swine, letting all the people know that I'm back to run the show. Cause what you did you know was wrong, and all the nasty things you've done. So baby listen carefully while I sing my comeback song. You lied to me, she said she'd never turn on me. You lied to me, but you did, but you did. You lied to me.
If I'd had more than 6 minutes of airtime. I want to welcome a very special guest, the queen of the Yang Gang, my wife Evelyn Yang. Come on up. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, Yang Gang. It is so wonderful to see all of you here tonight. I can't begin to tell you how thankful I am for your support and your support of my husband, Andrew. It is you all who keep him going, and with your support, there is nothing that we can't accomplish together. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Evelyn. Evelyn is now going to catch a flight back to see our kids, make sure they're still alive. She just FaceTimed them a minute ago, so we know they're alive. We know they're breathing as of 5 minutes ago. Well, let's give Evelyn a huge round of applause. Thank you, baby. Thank you for letting me run for president. Anytime someone thanks me, I say thank my wife, and now they can actually do it sort of in person, which makes me super happy. Because I know some of you were like, is Evelyn real? Does Andrew actually have a family? So, profoundly grateful. I'm a very, very lucky man. And America would be very lucky to have my wife as the First Lady. Atlanta, it is so great to be here. Last time I was here with a rally like this, there was a woman named Lacey who was the head of the Atlanta Yang Gang. And you know Lacey, you know how awesome she is, and now she's joined the team full time, which is even better. And seeing that energy, it was awesome. I came here to Atlanta. How many of you were here at the first Atlanta rally? Yeah. So remember that, and that was all homegrown. We came in, saw the incredible support here in Georgia, here in Atlanta, and said, no, I need to come back here. And so then when the debate was here, we were like, fantastic, let's go down there. Let's play basketball with my boy Dominique Wilkins, who can still dunk at the age of 59. And he's an even better human being than he is a basketball player, which is a very, very high bar. Dominique's a beautiful man. We bonded over the fact that we both have kids with special needs. And if you have special needs kids, I have to say it stretches you out as a person. I would never be running for president if not for my experience and Evelyn's experience as parents. So being back in Atlanta is a thrill. We had the debate last night. I'm going to debrief a little bit on that debate because it was good fun. I was up there. I have to say, I did feel really good up there. The Tyler Perry studio is ice cold. It's like a giant ice box. There's some footage of me like bouncing up and down, like Kamala looked at me and she was like, it's so fucking cold in here. And I was like, I feel for you, Kamala, because I've got like a suit and layers and like whatnot. But like the women candidates, I was like, man, they should have warned us that it was freaking like hand warmer season in Tyler Perry studio. So that was one, but I felt like $1 million up there. And even as time was ticking away and I was like, why haven't they called on me yet? It's like I'm right here. You know, like, oh, maybe I'll like wait, there was one point I literally just had both hands up. People of the room saw it too. My wife was joking about it. She was like, eventually you went with a both hands up move. No. So it's funny because I'm not one to complain about the refs. I think that, but eventually you have to be like, what the heck is going on here? Like, did I run over MSNBC's dog? Like, no, they didn't tell me. It's like, you killed Rover. That's why we're gonna omit you from graphics over and over again. That's why we're gonna like wait 32 minutes before asking you a question and then ask you like, the fewest number of questions, things that have absolutely nothing to do with your campaign. Remember that? Remember the condos from last month? Last month, what are the questions? CNN?
Let Yang speak! Let Yang speak! Let Yang speak! Let Yang speak!
Thank you, Yang Gang. It's really about letting the Yang Gang speak because we don't need the mainstream media to make our case to the American people. We keep spreading and spreading and growing and growing, and it's all because of you all. This is a grassroots movement. We all know we raised $10 million in the last quarter in increments of only $30 each. So I joke, my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. I gotta say, I was with Bernie. This is probably nothing new to you all, but like Bernie seems like a new man since the heart attack. He seems like, much more energized. And so, like, I saw him last night at the debate, and the man put his arm around me for the first time, and I was like, oh, it was really touching. And I told him, Bernie, you're an inspiration. I would never be running if not for you running in 2016. Like, you really are an awesome role model. And I told him also that I was really touched when he told an interviewer that he liked me. He was like, I like Andrew. And so then he put his arm around me. He's like, of course I'd like you, Andrew. You bring a lot of good ideas to the table. It's like that's my Bernie impression. It was really touching. I was like, oh, this is good fun. So my fans are almost as cheap as his. We're a little spendier. And we're getting more and more fans all the time thanks to you all spreading the word. How many of you all have like sent a YouTube video or an interview or a live? Thank you for doing that. And I know the experience you had. You were like, yo, check this out. And then, not a peep. That's the way it goes. Yeah, that's the way it goes. But days later, maybe sometimes even weeks later, they get back to you and we're like, oh, I checked that out, or I saw him on this other thing, so like da-da-da, like that's what it is. How many of you had that experience? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So that's the way it spreads, that's the way it grows. I love the fact that yanging someone is actually a verb. It turns out my last name can be a noun, verb, an adjective, any part of speech.
That's gangster!
I thank God my last name's Yang and it rhymes with gang. It'd be bleak if my name was like Andrew Chen. Then this entire movement never goes anywhere. This was meant to be Yang Gang. It was meant to be. So the message is we do not need the mainstream media to make our case. Look around you tonight. This is the case, Atlanta. This is the case. You don't look like the fucking internet to me. Now, we're going to keep growing and growing. Mainstream media is catching on. Some of the journalists are figuring it out. Some are like, oh, I don't understand. But then they too will figure it out. Because the people together cannot be ignored. I've seen it too. This message gets more and more powerful with each additional supporter, each additional donation, each additional canvasser, phone banker. People respond to other people, and people respond to passion. And I have seen the other candidates look at you all, the Yang Gang, at our events, and see the passion, and then like have this confusion in their eyes. You know what I mean? They're like, where are my where are my fans? What is my swag? Yeah. And then they'd be like, like you cannot buy this passion, Yang Gang. You cannot buy this passion. Yeah. humanity is going to win. And I know humanity is going to win because we have no choice but to win. Because we have this freight train bearing down on us, this freight train of this inhuman, punitive economy that's just grinding more and more of us up. And the more someone knows, the more concerned they are. I have now met hundreds of people who are like, hey, I work in AI. Hey, I work in environmental chemistry. Hey, I work in robotics. Hey, I work in the forefront of this. You know how that conversation never ends? And I think it's going to be all right. No one's ever like, I'm really deep into this stuff, and it'll be cool. Like, that's not the end of that exchange. They're like, the more I know, or if other people knew what I knew, they would be more and more freaked out. Like that's what the folks in AI and environmental chemistry and robotics and software and like all the other things tell me, including some of the biggest shots in the freaking world, like Elon Musk. Elon knows more than just about any of us, and he is deeply concerned. You know what I mean? He's so deeply concerned, he's like, yeah, universal basic income, inevitable. And so, if it's inevitable, then we have to go as quickly as possible. Right, you know? If we get it done immediately, what's the quote-unquote downside? Nothing. Let's see, we alleviate pointless human misery. We give ourselves time to evolve and adjust and learn. We adapt and have new institutions and structures. These are the quote-unquote downsides. What are the downsides of going too late? Everything. Essentially, you name it. Like disaster, catastrophe, like disintegration, us turning on each other. Like, you know, all of the bad stuff is like the downside of going. And you can't stick the genie back in the bottle. If you're like, oh, we screwed up, we should have done this like last year. All right, we'll do it now. It's like, it's not like everyone goes home and like puts their guns away. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like when society comes apart, it's very hard to put it back together. Society's a bit like Humpty Dumpty that way, you know what I mean? This is like one direction. No, people took that to be like a pop reference. I'm not that cool. I'm not that cool. So if Elon is right and other people that are deep into the space are right, and they are right, then we need to go as soon as possible. But our institutions are not responding to us anymore. The feedback mechanism is broken. That's what the media folks don't realize, is that the folks like us look up and say, okay, we get it. The institutions are not responding properly. Donald Trump, in a major way, is like a giant freaking cry for help. He was like, hey, like, stuff's not working. We're actually willing to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star. You know what I mean? That's tens of millions of Americans, including our friends, families, neighbors. I have family members who voted for Trump. We all do. And instead of demonizing literally our family members, we should figure out what is driving this polarization, these fissures in American life, the confusion, the demonization, the barriers, and then try and ease them. You know, that's, and one of the things I was really glad in my brief time last night, where I got the question about white supremacy. And what made me happiest is that Christian Picciolini, the anti-hate activist, actually sent me a text message and thanked me for relating his experience to the country. Like, that made me so proud. He also commended me for pronouncing his name right. Because Picciolini, it's not easy. But people came to me afterwards and like loved that answer in particular, because they were like, they thought that like no other politician actually would have acknowledged that there is humanity behind the hate. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that someone, because they're filled with hate, it's not like, oh, we need to somehow like dehumanize them. It's actually the opposite. We need to figure out what the heck is going on with our people, and then how we can actually provide a better way, a better path. And this is something that Christian's been working on for years. He tells me about when he interfaces with folks who are trying to leave hate groups, where when he talks to them, and at first they're super resistant. They're resistant over and over again, but then eventually they like unclench like a fist, you know, and it takes time. It's not immediate. And as someone I'll relate some stuff that I've been talked about at length. Most people know I played video games at a particular point in life. But I was the skinny, lone Asian kid in my grade who'd skipped a grade. And so you can kind of imagine how that played out. Also, I had like buck teeth, and like they hadn't invented cool glasses yet, so I had like the big Coke bottle glasses. And so you go through that stuff as a kid, and then you actually, in my case, like I became very hurt, like quite angry. And then when you're playing video games, you're like, yeah, I'm like destroying things. Whatever it is. But it's like there's like an arc I went through. I'm just gonna speak for myself. Like as a young man, and then there was a period I was like protein shaking and like went to the gym all the time. You know what I mean? Like you ever been to the gym and you've seen like the angry Asian man? You know what I mean? It's like working out a little too much. I was definitely this guy. Definitely. I was like so into that stuff. And so, in my case, I was very, very fortunate, where like, the manifestations of that anger were like not that unhealthy, I suppose. And then I was able to find really incredibly productive paths and groups of people to spend time with, but I can very, very easily see if those paths weren't there, then like that anger gets like deeper and darker and more internalized and can be pushed in like really rough ways. And our society at this point, unfortunately, is not truly that empathetic towards the struggles of particular groups of people. I'm going to say particularly men, where what we're presenting it as that, hey, like men are quote unquote the problem. And I would say it's like men are quote unquote the problem in some respects. But the thing is, we have to collectively come together and say, okay, like what is the problem? Like what are the problems? Because again, castigating folks who are suffering does not ease the suffering, and it does not solve the problems. And one thing I say is that healthy, strong men treat women well. And so the question is, how do we form more healthy, strong men in our society? How do we get boys who are struggling to become healthy, strong men? And that is not an easy answer. That is not a quick fix. That's years in the making. That's almost taking someone who like becomes this fist and you channel it, and then like you help them go through this period where eventually they unclench, they mellow out. But this clenching and mellowing out process, it's what, 12 years, 15 years? It's long enough to go through entire different arcs and life stages. It's enough time to do a lot of harm. It's a very lonely period. At least it was for me. That's one reason I'm so grateful to Evelyn. And I'm so grateful I met Evelyn when I did, because I would never have gotten Evelyn at all these other points in my life. You know what I mean? Like I met her when I was like a fairly fully formed adult. Like, like the protein shakes had eased up a little bit. No, seriously. It was like a fairly normal diet at that point. I wasn't going to the pump every day, like eating my egg whites and. Anyway, give me an insight into every guy in his 20s. So I was grateful in like the brief exchange we had last night that we could unpack that, because I think that's one of the fundamental issues facing our country. It's like trying to get like the fist to unclench, and there are people with different leadership styles in this race. I know I've got a particular leadership style. I hope people can sense how deeply you all feel about our vision for the country. Because, you can feel something very, very deeply and be willing to commit years of your life to make it happen without being the loudest, without being the biggest jerk, without being the person who's calculating what rehearsed attack line to use on who. You know what I mean? Like, this is a different approach to the campaign, but we're growing when other people are shrinking. We're hiring when other people are dropping out of the race. And when the time comes, I can still make a fucking fist. thank you. And thank you, too, for allowing us to have like a different kind of rally, a different kind of conversation. Now, part of it is that Evelyn was here and like I'm feeling, reflective. Oh, that's true. Now she's gone, we can really cut this. Time to cross her, go! She actually really did not like that stuff. That's funny. I appreciate it. I'm not going to do that to y'all. So some inside baseball in the campaign. I just got booked for Jimmy Kimmel next Tuesday. We just put up our highest poll number in Iowa just a few hours ago. Another poll just came out that had me in 5th place nationwide. And we all know that the top 4 frontrunners are very, very fluid. And one thing I said is that if you have 4 frontrunners, you have no frontrunners. Yeah, it's true. If you dig into the numbers, and you all know I'm a numbers guy, you see that the people are choosing candidates. They're saying flat out, they could change their minds. Majority of voters still saying, still figuring it out, still making up their minds. I have people who've looked at races for years and years, and they said this is the most fluid they have ever seen a field at this stage in generations. So we have the chance to make this case, the American people, of rewriting the rules of the 21st century to work for us. And a new way forward that actually takes into account the real challenges of this era. But we need your help, everyone here, to make this case as quickly as possible. We do not have that much time. We have about 2.5 months before the voting starts. It's a great time. The energy gets higher every single day. But we got to work our hearts out, Yang Gang. We do. So the easiest thing you all can do is you're pretty close to a magical land called South Carolina. And this beautiful gentleman, Jermaine Johnson, is one of the leaders in South Carolina. And so you can get in your car, take a road trip, hang out with Jermaine, knock on some doors, activate some South Carolina voters, and they respond to that passion. They look up and they say, wow, someone decided to take time out of their lives, their schedules, to come here and talk to me. And they listen to you, because they're actually really good people. They're polite, They'll look at you and they'll be like, oh, tell me more. And then you'll have this awesome feeling when you actually activate someone, when they listen to you and they say, oh, I think I saw something about that guy. I'm going to check him out. And you walk out of there being like, wow, that happened. We do not need that many people to make this case, Yang Gang. The numbers, in many ways, we're facing a set of structures that are almost eager to be toppled over. It's wild. It's so much fun. Where if you look at the raw number of voters you're talking about in these places, in Iowa, in the last caucus, it was something like 170,000 people in total voting. And so if you imagine a field of, let's call it 5 top candidates, how many do you need to win out of 170,000?
40,000!
50,000, something like that? You get 50,000, Andrew Yang's #1 out of Iowa. Yeah, the same thing New Hampshire. New Hampshire was 250,000 last time. The numbers are not that different. If you go to South Carolina and you activate 4 or 5 people, you can actually feel like you influence the course of human history. Because those 5 people in South Carolina, you know what they have? Friends, families, neighbors. If you actually activate someone and they get to a point where they're like, whoa, this guy actually makes a lot of sense. $1,000 a month would be better than anything anyone else is talking about. And then they stick a yard sign in that front lawn. That's how change happens. You can go to South Carolina, you can text bank. I did it today. A lot of you like to text, it's fun. It's actually fun. The funnest thing about text banking is the first thing they do is they try and figure out if you're a bot. You expect someone that like, hey, are you real? They like keep testing you to make sure you're a human in various ways. It's actually pretty funny. So you can canvass in South Carolina, you can text bank, you can phone bank, you can head to any of the early states, but we gotta fight this out, Yang Gang. This passion here in this gathering can change the world if we are willing to work for it. Are you with me, Yang Gang? Let's show the rest of the country it's not left, it's not right, it's